The boys are back in town and we've got a lot to talk about in this Easter egg filled episode that has a ton of callbacks to the comics. We're going to be going through the entire thing and breaking it all down, so if you want to know the ins and outs as well as our theories, then this is the video for you. Obviously there will be heavy spoilers here, so if you haven't had a chance to check out the episode yet, then I highly recommend that you turn off now. Anyway, with that out of the way, this is the Heavy Spoilers Show. I'm your host Definition. Now let's get into the boys. Okay, so episode 5 opens with the 7 movie. This parody of Batman v Superman / the Avengers is swiftly becoming the backdrop of the season, and I love that we pretty much see how Vought presents the heroes to the world compared to how they actually are. In the comics, Homelander and Co were able to get away with so much simply because Vaught's powerful PR team always spun the story to be beneficial to them, and here we see how Maeve surveys the wreckage before rescuing a character called Ruby. This scene is supposed to be the big platform for Maeve coming out, but it's pretty hammed up and doesn't feel authentic at all. We see Homelander sat behind the camera, and it's likely that these lines were forced in by the villain to show how much control he has over her life and the public's perception of her. Homelander mentions a Joss rewrite, and that really stands out and further plays up the notion of just how much those behind the camera are actually running the show. Joss Whedon of course took over Justice League after Zack Snyder left the project. You shoved out and pretty much changed the majority of the movie to make it more in line with Marvel. Fans hated it, but I must ask what they didn't like about it, as I thought the "I do not like you" line was Oscar worthy. Anyway, it got to the point that fans demanded that the original version be released, and we're now getting the Snyder Cut on HBO Max. There's been a lot of what happened on set brought to light recently by Ray Fisher, who said it was a toxic work environment, and though not intentional when this scene was being filmed, it hits home even harder now. We also see Agent Pierson played by Greg Grunberg, and I think this is a play on Agent Phil Coulson from Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., who of course starred in many of the early Marvel movies. In addition to this, there's some CG mutants in green screen suits, and I'd never really realised until now, but in pretty much all of the Avengers movies, they don't actually fight humans, and instead they fight either robots or aliens. Again, this shows the difference between the marketing and the truth, as the 7 pretty much go around murdering people, but I guess it's more acceptable for people to watch someone killing something they can't relate to over something they can. There's also the girls get it done scene, which feels so forced, and it reminded me a lot of that bit in Endgame, you know, the one, the girls get it done scene. It absolutely kills me how they're just riffing on that. Anyway, Starlight also refers to herself as a fembot, which is pretty much just a robot with a pretty face that is used as an obstacle but has no real power or agency. This shows that since the introduction of Stormfront that she's been relegated to second fiddle and just feels like some set dressing. Now we cut from one completely corporate and manufactured image of how the heroes are presented to the world to a real one which was filmed on a mobile phone. In it we see Homelander arrive at a village and gutshot a super terrorist which accidentally hits an innocent bystander in the process. I think this is a comment on police brutality, and in 2020 especially, we've been presented with several real-world incidents in which white authority figures arrived in order to arrest someone and they used excessive force. These moments are often filmed on mobile phones, as is this scene, and it shows the juxtaposition between a control camera moment and a real-world one. Homelander clearly could have taken the villain in alive, as he wasn't fazed by their powers, but instead he killed them, again showing excessive force. Homelander's image really gets ruined by this, and the people demand retribution for his actions as a war criminal. The PR team are offered up to help with the situation, but Homelander takes things into his own hands, and even ends up making an ally with someone that I really wasn't expecting him to. Elsewhere is Billy, who after being rejected by his wife last week, has decided that it's time to leave the boys behind. He really builds his relationship with Huey, and even calls him his canary at one point, which refers to a line by Mother's Milk in episode 3. The canary usage here is actually referencing the saying canary in the coal mine. Canaries used to be taken down the mines in order to indicate danger, as if there were invisible gases such as carbon monoxide exposed to the miners, the canary would die quickly due to its size, and this would indicate danger. Thus, Huey is seen as someone that will stop Billy from rushing into things due to his level-headedness. In the episode, we learn that Huey is very similar to Billy's brother Lenny, who, like the character, used to stop Butcher from running headfirst into things. Lenny too is mentioned in the comics, and the character sadly passed away, which is likely why Billy gravitated towards Huey. He catches mother's milk watching Outlander, and begrudgingly the pair track him down. Now we actually see Billy get a family reunion with his Auntie Judy, and finally we see his dog Terra. Terra was a big aspect of the comics that was sadly omitted from the first season, much to the dismay of fans. He pretty much humps everything that he can, and I love that he has an F-Pig there to keep him occupied. In the comics, when Butcher and Huey first meet, Huey is upset about his girlfriend dying, and Butcher actually wants to make him laugh and says F it, which not only says to Huey that it's just one of them things, but it also makes Terra run off and start humping another dog, which is one of the funniest parts of the first volume. Shoutouts to Chris from Chris from 3C Films for hitting me up with that one. You're my canary. Another scene that pulls directly from the comics is the one featuring Kimiko. The scene in which she confronts 3 men before beating the crap out of them and ripping off one of their faces is line for line exactly the same as how it plays out in the first volume. Yes, even down to the bit about kittens. This scene was actually used to introduce Kimiko in the comics, and it pretty much cemented her as a complete badass. Here it's also dropped to great effect, and it lets hardcore fans know that the show is still pulling from the source material, even if it doesn't always seem like it. I loved how this trio also talked about the whitewashing in Hollywood, and as we've seen from the set of The Seven, the studio is pushing this idea of the white Superman, whilst in real life minorities are oppressed by the corporation. A-Train, as we know, has been ousted by the group, and at the moment there's no people of colour in it. Well, except for Black Noir, who doesn't really identify with a race, so there's everything covered there. Now, another interesting thing that I noticed in this episode is the Vietnamese crepe truck, which we learn is on the set of The Seven. Either people eating from this or discussing it pops up 3 times in the episode, and though it might be a reach, I think it could tie in with the fresca that was dropped quite heavily in the first 3 episodes. Potentially, both Vought and the church could be drugging the food in order to keep the Seven submissive, and the constant repetition of this food and drink has clearly been picked for a reason. We've seen not only the deep fallen line, but also A-Train, who goes from refusing to say any of the lines written for his character to dropping them in his final scene for the film. Though he is blackmailed, I think the repetition of the truck could mean something or absolutely nothing, but you know how we like a reach. Now, speaking of the deep, we learn that his wedding to Cassandra was fast-tracked, and he's now doing the chat show circuit in order to rebuild his public image. He appears with Katie Couric speaking on behalf of the Church of the Collective, and I got a lot of Tom Cruise Scientology vibes here, down to the lighting and the interview style which the show is clearly riffing on. The church will definitely come back up, as Stormfront even mentions that she used to be a member. She hints that she left after they started letting in more demographics, which again teases at the character being linked to her comic book counterpart. Now, just as Billy goes to leave his auntie, someone ups the ante, and that is Black Noir, who we learn has tailed Butcher from Becca's. Terrible. Now, the boys buy some time by reporting a gas leak so they can do a Home Alone and set up some traps. Huey and Butcher have a really heavy scene together, and I love how Mother's milk is the glue that's sort of stopping everything from falling apart. Though Billy initially seems like he's lashing out, he's clearly trying to keep Huey safe, which hammers home this surrogate brother relationship. Billy's real brother of course died, and I believe that he's only trying to protect Huey, even though he goes about it the wrong way. Annie's mother also pops up and tries to repair the relationship with her daughter. Stormfront talks her around to entertaining her, and we also learn some of the backstory about the character, namely that her mother's name was Adele. Now, we have been theorizing that Stormfront was actually created during the Second World War after Vought was given permission to experiment on Jewish people. We actually see Stormfront's mother during this episode, and due to the age difference between the two, it does seem like she could have been around during this time. In the comics, we discover that the majority of the Seven were created when pregnant women were injected with copious amounts of Compound B. Homelander doesn't even know his mother, but the fact that Stormfront does hints at her being alive before Vought really came to power and started doing this procedure routinely. She doesn't look old enough to have been a teen during the 40s, but this is a photo, so again it could be taken at any time really. Also, we know that Vought create PR images for the Seven, so this might not even be her mother, as we know that she was already a completely different hero in the 70s. Again, might be reaching, might not, you know we're like a reach though. However, there is one interesting theory that the show seems to be confirming, and at one point we see Stormfront on the phone to Lamplighter. Last week we said we think Stormfront is slowly ousting the Seven so she can bring the old team back. So far we've had Eddie the Eagle pop up, Soldier Boy has been name dropped, and now Lamplighter has stopped by too. It seems like the pieces are slowly falling into place, and the introduction of Shawn Ashmore brings a lot with it. Lamplighter is of course an old member of the group, and the character possesses the ability of pyrokinesis. This is kind of ironic as in the X-Men Ashmore played Iceman, and here he's doing the opposite, becoming a character more in line with pyro. Either way, there's a lot to look forward to, and I can't wait to see if more from the older Seven pop up. Now, a marketing team pitched the idea of Maeve's new image, in which she will go as the name Brave Maeve. I don't know how they don't kill themselves laughing when they come up with this stuff. Now, the company want to seem like they're accepting of the LGBT community, but they force her to say that she's a lesbian instead of just being bisexual. Her girlfriend Elena is told that she has to play up being more masculine in order to not offend the public too much, as it may be problematic. They don't see how problematic their forcing of this image is, and they continue to be worse and worse. Elena walks out, and Maeve realizes that enough is enough and that she has to take Homelander down. This is a big turn up for the Bucks, and I can see her at the Deep and A-Train, potentially even joining the boys in order to bring an end to Homelander. Kimiko is also working freelance and completing missions. Her contact is actually the woman friend she went to last week, and clearly she used the information he gave her in order to hire her. Frenchie tries to talk her out of going down this dark path, but she's just filled with so much rage that it's impossible to. She's almost as bad as the soup she hates, and her arc acts in real shades of grey throughout this episode. A-Train leaves the Seven officially, and I thought it was hilarious that he did his final monologue to a body double. We jump to protests outside Vought and see Victoria Newman delivering a speech. In the comics, the character is actually a man known as Victor K. Newman, and they are a soup that goes under the name Vic the Beep. Vic runs for vice president, and after his running mate gets elected, he kills them so that he can take his spot in the Oval Office. I'm not sure whether this will be the case in the show, but they've clearly given her this name for an important reason, and it's just something to bear in mind. Homelander swoops down and tries to win the crowd round, but they refuse to buy into the pandering. Now, I actually got to see this episode early, and it's been killing me for 2 weeks with the comment section on my video telling me that Homelander goes wild and massacres the crowd. Unfortunately, it's just a fake out, and Homelander just imagines what he would do to them. Are you disappointed? Let me know in the comments below. Now, what is interesting though is that we're starting to see Homelander's armor get chipped away. Though he has the same powers as Superman, he doesn't really have a weakness per se, and is pretty much unstoppable. However, when discussing this, Anthony Starr, who plays the character, stated that Homelander's weakness is actually his ego. He's the most powerful man on the planet, and because of this, the perception that he has of himself is so fragile that it's completely easy to dismantle it. After the crowd shout him down, he just goes into autopilot and resorts to the catchphrase, "You guys are the real heroes," and I loved seeing that this was so stressful for Ashley that some of her hair fell out. Now, to raise the stakes even more, the fire service finished their gas leak investigation, and thus Noir can move in on Butcher. I absolutely love this scene, and it's laced with a lot of horror elements such as the slow moving footsteps of the character as he walks about the house. I got a lot of Michael Myers vibes from this scene, and similar to the shape, this creature is devoid of personality and seemingly invincible. He is, however, clearly Vaught's lapdog, and much like his role in the comics, he operates without question and is just Edgar's puppet. I believe this is why Edgar isn't scared of Homelander, as he knows that he has Black Noir under his control and can take him out if needs be. Butcher manages to get Edgar to call him off by blackmailing him with photographs of Homelander and his son Ryan, which he threatens he'll release if anyone is killed. It's a really tense scene that shows the boys do have their ways to defeat the Supes, they just have to be cunning about it. Billy says farewell to Terra as the police arrive, and he promises to get Becca back, showing that he's finally had a big change of heart. He gives Terra an F-toy, and what a way for him to say his goodbyes. Now we jump to Starlight at the crepe truck, and she sneaks into Stormfront's trailer. She hacks her laptop with the password Adele, which was the name of her mother, and in it she finds emails from the psychiatric hospital that Lamplighter was at. She's unable to read them as Stormfront enters the trailer, but clearly the pair have been sending messages back and forth. Annie tries to shout her down, but Stormfront reveals that she knows Annie was the one that leaked Compound V. However, Annie claps back, revealing that she knows the truth about Liberty, and Stormfront downplays being prejudiced, but we know the truth. Stormfront says she'll be a big help to her, and clearly she's gonna be using her at some point in the future, though we don't know what just yet. Just as things are about to go down, Homelander knocks on the trailer and goes to Stormfront for help. Probably the weirdest sex scene I've ever come across. Not my proudest one. Not my proudest scene I've ever had to break down. And I don't know what it is with this guy, but he just keeps getting weirder and weirder. Now, this is obviously all part of Stormfront's play, and she's clearly setting up certain heroes against one another whilst putting other things in place. I believe that she's going to start blackmailing Homelander in order to not only supplant him with a group, but also banish him to obscurity. This is the same punishment that was dealt to her, and she likely wants revenge for the way that Vought cast her out. She also wants her boobs lasered. Boobs! Now, though this is weird, what it does show is that Stormfront is pretty much invincible, and she's going to be difficult to take down when it comes down to it. Anyway, that closes out the episode, and as always, yeah, I'd love to hear your thoughts on it, so comment below and let me know. If you enjoyed this video, then please drop a thumbs up, and make sure you check out our breakdown of Homelander, which is going to be linked at the end. We go over the character's full bio from the comics, so it's definitely worth checking out if you want to know more. Don't forget, we're also giving away a free copy of the Christopher Nolan collection to one random subscriber, and all you have to do to be on the chance of winning is like the video, drop a thumbs up, and also subscribe to the channel, please. Now, if you want to support the channel and get to see content early, then please consider clicking the join button below. You can also come chat with us on the Discord server, linked in the description, or at Heavy Spoilers on Twitter. Thanks for making it until the end of the video. You've been the best. I've been Definition, and I'll see you next time. Take care. Peace out.